It is Thursday, January 4th, and this is The National.
Tonight, Ontario's premier calls a Tim Hortons franchisee a bully, as some employees wonder how a pay raise may leave less in their pockets.
Albert Schultz bows out of the theater company he founded, a reaction to the allegations made by women on The National last night.
But we begin with a bomb cyclone of winter exploding across Atlantic Canada. The storm goes all the way from the Carolinas to Cape Breton. It is a diabolical combination of heavy snow, hurricane-force wind, and bitter cold. A storm surge flooded the icy streets in parts of Massachusetts, creating a dangerous situation. In Boston, this road became an icy river when the seawall failed, while snow and wind made for whiteout conditions elsewhere. In parts of New Brunswick, heavy snow fell all day. Authorities pleaded with people to stay off the roads. And in Nova Scotia, high winds and freezing rain presented the biggest challenges. So let's start our coverage with a look at the scene near Halifax tonight. This is the community of Eastern Passage, where a storm surge is rolling through. You can see those waves pushing their way in towards land. The CBC's Kayla Hounsell has more on the situation in Nova Scotia.
It had barely started when it became clear the wind would be the major concern. From Nova Scotia's capital to the province's south shore.
Down here, it's going to be brutal. I live down here.
And everywhere in between, the wind rocked boats, ripped off shingles, and knocked out power for tens of thousands.
Those forecasts having upwards of 110 to 140 kilometer per hour winds and sustained winds as well, which can really cause a lot of fallen trees on our lines.
Nova Scotia Power is already warning its customers they might be off the grid until early next week. In the community of Indian Point, the fire chief has set up a warming center, and volunteers call around to make sure everyone's okay.
We have a list of people in the community that are, say, vulnerable, older, maybe not as mobile as other people, and so we keep in touch with them.
He's even making house calls.
Hello, Larry. She's a blowing, eh? Just came. See how you doing, man.
I'm doing all right, Chief.
Larry Eisner lives in a trailer with his sister. They're still getting over the last storm on Christmas Day. They lost power for 2 days.
No phone, nothing. It was pretty bad. I don't think I've ever experienced that ever in my entire life, as cold as that.
They're bracing for what's to come when the wind is done with them this time.
We're here in the wide open in that, and the trailer is old, and it's a home, you know. It's not a fancy home, but it's a roof over your head.
With most of the region seeing gusts up to 110 kilometers per hour, most flights were grounded.
I think I'll get back to Sherbrooke in Quebec.
Vancouver is where our grandpa is passing away, so we're hoping to get there for a visit and not a funeral.
And Halifax's mayor says the storm isn't over yet.
It's expected to be at its worst at different points, gusting throughout the night.
With storm surge warnings still in effect, officials are also warning about the possibility of flooding in coastal areas overnight. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Indian Point, Nova Scotia.
The storm also barreled into New Brunswick, blanketing just about everything in a layer of white. And the blow comes on a significant date for the province. Our Harry Forstell is in Fredericton with more. So, Harry, just how badly has New Brunswick been hammered?
Well, we got hammered pretty good today, Andrew. I don't know the snow totals yet, but it looks like we got, close to the projected 40 centimeters of snow in the Fredericton area and through other parts of the province. And of course, there's more coming tonight. Right now, we're being pelted with ice pellets and heavy gusts of wind. But, you know, the thing about New Brunswickers is past experience has taught them when to pay attention. This, of course, is the 20th anniversary of that terrible ice storm that tore through Ontario and Quebec in 1998 and tore through New Brunswick as well. Then last year we had the problem in northeastern New Brunswick of a major ice storm that left people there without power for more than a week. So when emergency officials and police warned New Brunswickers today that it was best for them to stay off the roads, they listened. The road behind me at noon today was bumper to bumper with traffic as people scrambled to get home, as authorities had instructed them. Businesses, offices, schools, university campuses all closed today and sent people home. And that made it much easier for the plows to get around on the roads today. As I said, we had gusts of wind, nothing near what they had in Nova Scotia, but still expecting 90-kilometer-an-hour gusts through the course of the night tonight. And really, the concern has been on the condition of the roads. At one point, police had closed parts of Highway 1 and the Trans-Canada Highway number 2. They had warned people to stay off that road. For the most part, people appear to have paid attention, and that's made cleaning these roads a lot easier.
And Harry, could I just ask you very quickly, are we expecting things to improve tomorrow?
Well, eventually I'm sure they will, but not overnight tonight. We're expecting more ice, fluctuating temperatures, and goodness knows what we're going to see by tomorrow morning. But those roads are still going to be greasy, and I'm sure the plows are going to be working all night to keep them clear, Andrew.
All right, Harry Forstell in Fredericton, thanks very much.
Take care.
And in Prince Edward Island tonight, this is a very empty Confederation Bridge. At one point, it was closed to all vehicles. They're also dealing with whiteout conditions there. Now, another remarkable thing about this system we've already given you a hint of is its sheer size. It also battered the U.S. East Coast today. More than a dozen states were on the receiving end of snow, high wind, and cold. Stephen D'Souza in New York shows us just how bad things got.
Like a hurricane in January, the bomb cyclone sent Atlantic waters churning and waves crashing on coastal towns in Massachusetts. The combination of high tide with a massive winter storm hitting its peak at the same time made for treacherous conditions and left residents scrambling for safety.
It really shocked us. We didn't have any flood warnings or evacuation orders or anything like that.
In Boston, a near-record storm surge turned snow-covered streets into slushy rivers. Some tried driving through. Others trudged along on foot. But many were stuck in the icy mess, forcing dramatic rescues by boat. The storm bringing conditions not seen in the city since the late 70s. From space, it's clear this system is a monster, slowly working its way up the coast with a dangerous mix of snow and high winds. In North Carolina, several deaths were blamed on the weather.
There it goes.
In New Jersey, gas and electricity were shut off before wind gusts toppled the roof of this gas station. With the highways a mess, the governor declared a state of emergency. In New York, the snow came fast early in the day. There, too, the mayor declared a snow emergency. Schools were shut down, and by midday, whiteout conditions forced the suspension of all flights in and out of JFK and LaGuardia.
Between the very low temperature, the strong winds, the driving snow, everyone should take this one very seriously and take precautions.
As the storm moved north, the focus here turned to what's next. A blast of Arctic air is moving in, bringing with it record cold temperatures that will last through the weekend. In New England, the hope is that the worst of the flooding is over and that the water will recede before winter's icy grip takes hold. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
Yikes. We are going to have meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff tracking this storm closely for us. She'll join us in about 20 minutes' time with an update. But first, Adrian, you've been watching a story out of Ontario that's gotten the Premier herself very upset.
Indeed, things can really heat up, Andrew, when good intentions don't land as planned. So let's start by hearing from a Tim Hortons worker whose identity we've agreed to hide.
I truly believe Kathleen Wynne is doing a great thing by increasing our minimum wage, but I feel that they didn't completely think it through.
So imagine if you got a big raise, nearly 18%, only to find out you will actually be taking home less money. The minimum hourly wage in Ontario just rose to $14. Some bosses responded by cutting hours, paid benefits, and other perks. Today, the Premier herself came out swinging against such moves. But as Jacqueline Hansen tells us, this is a complex issue, and it's tough to say who has won and who has lost.
This small-town coffee shop is now a poster child for the unintended consequences of Ontario's minimum wage hike. Employees received this letter from the store's owners saying that due to the wage increases and the lack of assistance and financial help from our head office and from the government, breaks will no longer be paid, and long-term employees will now be required to pay half the cost of their benefits.
I was shocked because I figured maybe we had some perks of being senior staff there, that we would be able to keep our benefits.
This Tim Hortons employee agreed to speak to CBC News on condition of anonymity, factoring in fewer paid hours and the cost of covering part of their benefits. The employee estimates that every 2 weeks, they'll take home $50 less.
I thought it was getting ahead, and this legislation was put there to help the minimum wage employees make a little more money, and we're losing more than what we're gaining.
A group representing some franchisees says it hoped to raise menu prices to help offset the higher labor costs. But it says while other competitors have received concessions from their franchisors, unfortunately, our chain has not. Many of our store owners are left no alternative but to implement cost-saving measures in order to survive. That's not how Ontario's premier sees it.
I think it is bullying. I think it's taking it out on people who really who haven't got the ability to fight back, and I think it is vindictive.
But Tim Hortons is just one flashpoint in the minimum wage debate.
Restaurants in Ontario run on the thinnest margins in the country. We're going to see a reduction in service hours. We're going to see layoffs, unfortunately, and unfortunately we're going to have costs passed on to the consumers.
That seems to be the bottom line. Someone has to shoulder the cost of that big raise. Customers, owners, or workers. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Cobourg, Ontario.
In the minimum wage conversation this country is having, there's a constant push and pull between the costs and benefits to workers and their bosses. The math is on a lot of minds, so we reached out to the group that represents more than 500 Tim Hortons franchisees. To them, the $2.40 hourly increase is actually a lot more than that. Here's how they break it down. Factor in additional costs, including CPP, EI, and training, and it's actually $3.35 extra an hour. After a year's worth of serving donuts and coffees, that means an added cost to the franchisee of $7,000 per full-time employee. Still with us? Given an average of 35 employees per franchise, that's $243,000 a year. The hit to their bottom lines from this minimum wage increase in Ontario, anywhere between 4% and 7%. And Ian, you have an update now on a national investigation that we aired last night about actor Albert Schultz.
And when you were talking to Yoanna Remiliotis yesterday, she was talking about how this is changing so quickly, and it continues to do that. Albert Schultz, now out, Soul Pepper Theatre Company's longtime artistic director, has resigned, bowing to pressure after sexual misconduct claims against him plunged the company into controversy. He issued a statement saying, "While I will continue to vigorously defend myself against the allegations that are being made, I've made this decision in the interest of the future of the company into which I poured the last 20 years of my life, and in the interest of the aspirations of the artists and administrators of the company." Hours earlier, 4 women and their legal team detailed their civil suit against Schultz, lifting the curtain on what they say was a toxic workplace.
I worked there for 12 seasons. So there were a lot of instances over the years of either unwanted touching or groping.
The women say bullying and unwanted sexual touching were a regular occurrence, and that they were afraid to speak out because they could lose roles and opportunities. Hannah Miller says she doesn't want others to go through that.
For women out there who are young actresses who are at the start of their career, have the strength to deserve what you deserve, and that is a safe work environment and a safe place for you to make art.
This story is being closely followed, of course, by many in the Canadian acting community. As Salima Shivji tells us, many actors are wondering what impact it may have on them.
No wonder you didn't report this.
News of the allegations against Albert Schultz spread fast, dominating conversation at this rehearsal for a play, fittingly, about sexual harassment.
It was shock and awe mixed with elation, and then a bit of hesitation. There's this whole now what.
At this university theater, guest director Leslie Wade is thinking back on her time working with Soulpepper and Albert Schultz.
He has created a culture that I have experienced where it's a bit narcissistic and power-driven.
With the allegations of harassment against one of the top stars of Canadian theatre and the news of his resignation from Soulpepper, these acting students are learning their lines. They're also worrying about their future.
It's terrifying, honestly. Being in this industry as a woman is terrifying.
It's a shame nonetheless, but it's nothing new, and it's just something I've learned I'm going to have to deal with.
Nina Liakino doesn't believe that.
This is an opportunity. We are at a crossroads where meaningful change can happen. So let's do that.
She points to a new program from the Union and Theatre Association called Not in Our Space, which promotes zero tolerance for bullying and harassment. One of the challenges, getting theatre actors to report inappropriate behavior.
They may decide they're not going to report now because there's only 2 more weeks in the run, or there's only 14 more shows. They'll just grit their teeth.
That may change as other actors look to these women speaking out. With allegations Schultz says he'll defend vehemently. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, for more on this, we're joined by Henna Singh, an employment lawyer here in Toronto. The women in this case could have followed one of 3 paths. They could have gone public, held a news conference and left it there. They could have gone to the police and initiated a criminal investigation. Or in this case, what they did was go to a lawyer and start a civil lawsuit. And you think they made the right choice?
Absolutely. The criminal process is a very grueling one for victims. The standard is very high to get a conviction against the accused. And then the outcome is focused on the sentencing of the accused, not redress for the victim. But in the civil context, the outcome is focused on redress for the victim. And the standard is actually much lower, so it's easier to prove your case.
So let's talk a little bit more about one of those points. When people do go to the police, they decide what happens next, if in fact anything happens next. In a civil lawsuit, and you represent plaintiffs in civil lawsuits, talk about the control they have on the process now.
In the criminal context, the police and the Crown have the control, and they govern the process. In the civil context, the plaintiffs are the ones that start the case, and they work with their lawyers to move through the process. So they're the ones that are in control.
You talked about how this is different from a criminal process, where it's different from simply going public as well, is that there could be damages at the end of this. So we heard about how much they're asking for. Based on your experience, is that what a plaintiff usually really wants, or is there a bit of is a bit aspirational?
There's some inflation there usually. So they're hoping for probably a good number, but not as high as what they've put in the statement of claim.
And again, based on your experience, what's the likelihood, do you think, this will actually end up in a trial?
It's very low likelihood of it going to a trial. Most of these cases resolve. The whole system is designed for resolution at any stage. So starting right now, they could sit down if both parties are ready to talk about resolution. They can sit down anytime before a trial.
One last quick thing, though, is that almost in every settled civil case I know, there's an agreement not to publicly disclose the terms. And so is that usually part of the package?
It's almost mandatory. People don't want this to go public afterwards. Any sort of payment will look like an admission when it really is just a compromise. So there's always a confidentiality component to any settlement of this type.
Henna Singh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And still ahead on The National, more on our top story, the massive winter storm hitting the Maritimes. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff is tracking it all for us.
But first, Justin Trudeau is still riding high in the polls, so what can the opposition do this year to break through? That's just one of your questions that the At Issue panel will answer.
And the White House is in damage control tonight, bracing for the release of a book that describes the Trump administration as utter chaos.
It's disgraceful and laughable. If he was unfit, he probably wouldn't be sitting there and wouldn't have defeated the most qualified group of candidates the Republican Party has ever seen.
I don't know, he called me a great man last night, so, you know, he obviously changed his tune pretty quick. All right, thank you all very much. Thank you. I don't talk to him. I don't talk to him.
U.S. President Donald Trump taking another shot at his former top advisor, Steve Bannon, today over negative comments that appear in the upcoming book about the Trump White House by author Michael Wolff. An early excerpt has already triggered a furious response. Trump's lawyers have threatened legal action against both men and are trying to block the book from coming out at all. All of this drama has only fanned the flames of public interest. And as Paul Hunter reports, there was already plenty of fire and fury today.
With excerpt after salacious excerpt dropping jaws everywhere on pre-orders alone, it's already the best-selling book in America. Today's tidbits on Donald Trump, White House insiders who call him an idiot, a fool, a moron. Senior advisor Kellyanne Conway is said to have put a finger gun to her head behind his back. And remember the day then Press Secretary Sean Spicer falsely said,
"This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period."
Immediately disproven, says the book's author Spicer had been pressed upon to justify that crowd, later muttering a vulgar version of, "You can't make this stuff up." So, for the second straight day, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders tried to put a shine on it.
If you guys know anything, you know that Donald Trump is a winner.
Nonetheless, she was asked to comment on the book's suggestion Trump is mentally unfit to serve. To that, she said,
that it's disgraceful and laughable. If he was unfit, he probably wouldn't be sitting there.
And there was pushback today against the book's author, Michael Wolff, who'd been granted broad access in the West Wing for his research.
I'm not going to go through every single page of the book.
Sanders challenged Wolff's claim Trump once didn't know who John Boehner was, the former House Speaker, calling that ridiculous.
Considering the majority of you have seen photos, and frankly, several of you have even tweeted out that the president not only knows him, but has played golf with him, tweeted about him. I mean, that's pretty simple and pretty basic.
Still, the overall picture of what Wolff calls his insane year in the White House has so riled the president, the famously litigious Trump has fired back through his lawyers, seeking to block publication and demanding an apology. The publisher's response? They've moved up the book's release date to tomorrow. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
So who is Michael Wolff? Like Trump himself, the popular author and columnist is from New York, and he likes to be where the action is. His breakthrough bestseller covered the 90s .com era, but he really made his name focusing on America's rich and powerful. Wolff has been praised and derided for his writing on media moguls, especially Fox and News Corporation honcho Rupert Murdoch. And across the United States and in parts of Canada, too, marijuana companies plummeted in value today, some by more than a third, all after the U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions rolled back an Obama-era policy that had helped states legalize pot by just not enforcing federal laws. That leeway is now gone.
But a majority of states now in this country have legalized marijuana in some capacity. It is telling those voters and those states that they know better.
When he was campaigning, Donald Trump said states should set their own path on pot. But now that he's in charge, the White House spokesperson said the president believes in enforcing all federal laws.
When we come back, the At Issue panel sat down with Rosie earlier to answer your questions. What can we expect in politics in 2018? Stick around to find out.
But first, take a look at Charlottetown tonight. PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia are getting hit hard by a winter storm. Johanna Wagstaff is next with a look at how long it'll last. On the National tonight, a massive winter storm is hitting the East Coast. Thousands of people in the Maritimes are without power thanks to ice, snow, and hurricane-force winds. CBC senior meteorologist Johanna Wagstaff has been tracking the storm all day for us, joins us now. So, Johanna, what's the latest?
Well, Andrew, the center of the storm is now moving through the Bay of Fundy, but I wanted to start off with the big satellite picture. This massive storm is now spreading hurricane-force winds across parts of Newfoundland as it begins finally to ease as far as the winds and snow goes back in towards the New England states of the U.S. Taking you on in towards a closer look, again, that center of pressure now moving through the Bay of Fundy area. We're getting heavy snow wrapping in towards New Brunswick on the back end, and storm surge still a concern on the front end with rain. And I'm getting a few reports around the Halifax area. High tide just in the past hour, flooding along the boardwalk in Halifax, reports of actual debris moving inland around Shore Road, and in the Liverpool area, reports of power lines actually sparking. So power outages are going to be a big story over the next 24 hours. Look at the current winds right now, still gusting close to 80 kilometers per hour in Halifax, 60 in towards Gander, 80 St. John's. We've been seeing peak wind gusts, though, over 115 kilometers per hour. And this, Andrew, is just the start of what will be a very long night.
Wow. And Joe, you know, so many folks have been told don't get complacent because the worst may be still yet to come. So can you tell us what do the next few hours, the next few days look like?
Yeah, the center of that storm, Andrew, still has to move all the way through the Maritime. So wind warnings remain in place for much of Atlantic Canada for the next 24 hours as we continue to tap into that very cold air that will then move in behind this storm for the weekend. So that low pressure system will track up towards Labrador. For those of you getting rain, heads up, it'll be switching over to snow through Friday morning, remaining very gusty though over the next 24, if not 48 hours. And then we get into that big Arctic cool down for the weekend. So a long night ahead for Atlantic Canada.
All right. Our meteorologist, Johanna Wagstaff, thanks so much. We do have some breaking news now from Ottawa. Senator Lynn Beyak has been removed from the Conservative caucus after refusing herself to remove a letter posted on her website. It was from a Canadian suggesting Indigenous Canadians were lazy. The Conservative leader says the party won't tolerate racism. Now, it's Thursday night, at-issue night. You likely noticed Rosie is on assignment, but earlier she sat down to record this special edition of the panel.
2018 is just 4 days old. The House of Commons is in the middle of a Christmas break or a holiday break. What better way to start the year than some political analysis from At Issue? We're taking the time today to look ahead and to answer some of your questions. Yes, actual questions by you. Andrew, Chantal, and Althea are all here at the table in Toronto. So we put a call out. We got lots of different questions. And we've just chosen these. It's not because they're the best or the worst or anything. They're just the ones that I found interesting. I'm going to start with Austin Stanton, who tweeted in this question, asking, what will be the biggest issue for the Trudeau government in 2018? And he offers, although you don't have to go along with these, Nafta negotiations, the opioid crisis, or legal weed. Althea, you want to kick it off?
Nafta.
Nafta.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's the one thing that is still lingering on the radar. The government is trying its best to make sure that status quo is maintained. The Trump administration seems to be, by all indication, not really interested in making a deal. And so I think there will be some sort of resolution to the whole NAFTA issue, whether it's they dump it completely and we start with a bilateral agreement, or they just kind of like let it way by the wayside. We'll see.
I think both. People are prepared now for the NAFTA story to not end well.
Yeah.
And I think that's help to the government. Also criticism about the approach. While there has been some, it's not been really focused on what else would you do if you were them. I think marijuana is an issue that's got a lot of traction on the ground. Lots of people watching. I think the Liberals still hope it's going to end up being a good news story. And so they will be putting a lot of political energy into it.
I would broaden it out from NAFTA to include the China talks and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. You know, the government's got 3 different balls juggled in the air, and they're dropping all of them at this point. They're interlinked, and I know they're concerned about not making one concession in one talk and another, but at some point they've got to bring these home. We've got to have alternatives if NAFTA gets into trouble, among other things. And right now, we're kind of the odd man out.
Except that there's overlap, you're right, but there's also conflict between all those deals, right? And I don't know how you
But I'm also not convinced.
Not as much as they're claiming. Sorry, just to finish point, it's not as much as they're claiming, because some of the things that they're trying to hold on to are things that, in my opinion, they ought to be more than willing to get rid of. So, like supply management, for example.
But I'm not convinced that in the mind of voters, NAFTA and China are the same thing. There is a lot more suspicion and possibly a larger approval rating of the government not doing China than the opposite. And I note on that the both main opposition parties are not going to be pushing the China card because the NDP is against it and the Conservatives are not really hot on it either.
Okay, well,
so.
that brings me to a question from Catherine on Twitter @Stocat1, who actually asks, will all the trade deals finally come to fruition with progressive elements intact?
No.
I would guess no.
No. I mean, there won't be any progressive elements in any China trade deal. Well, there won't be a China trade deal.
Well, there won't be a China trade deal.
There might be climate. That would be considered.
But there won't be a China trade deal, not in 2018, before December 31st, not happening.
Right.
And the progressive elements seem to be more of a PR thing. Like, you know, you have the Chile free trade deal, and it's non-binding. So how does the government justify that it can have, it says it wants as a baseline CETA, what it negotiated in CETA. But it's not going to get that probably in Nafta. It didn't get that in Chile. So
I don't think they would have got it from the Obama administration, never mind the Trump administration.
Okay, well then here, where's this next question about NAFTA? Elizabeth Morris wants to know, is there a point at which Canada should walk away from NAFTA negotiations or give notice? Would Canada be better off with a bilateral agreement with the U.S., which is what you hinted at, Althea?
We should certainly be prepared to walk away. You have to be in any negotiation, and particularly in this negotiation where some of the demands from the U.S. side are just frankly crazy. They've got no business being part of any trade negotiation. I mean, a 5-year sunset clause, for example. I mean, exactly. So there are things, I mean, usually in trade talks, I would say it's almost impossible to have a bad trade deal, in my opinion. I know other people would differ. This is a case where you could. The other thing I would say is it's far from clear to me that Trump could actually pull the United States out of NAFTA. If you look at the constitutional separation of powers, he can give notice, but Congress has to pass the enabling legislation. And I don't think he'd have the votes in Congress, particularly when he's at 32% of the vote approval.
If you want Trump to run into Congress as an obstacle to getting rid of NAFTA, you probably don't walk away. You let them walk away. And so they can't use you as the reason why you're pulling the plug on NAFTA. But Canada walked away, so in any event, this is where we are. So you don't walk away. You wait for them to do so.
Although I wonder if Trump, just because of who he is, if he wouldn't somehow see that as an interesting move and gain some respect for us to, if we did it.
It's Congress that in the end will likely or not save NAFTA, not necessarily anything at the negotiating table.
But when this first came up, there was a lot of talk of, oh, they've got us over a barrel. How can we possibly, because we're so desperate for NAFTA. We have some bargain leverage, and we should certainly not capitulate.
Okay.
I don't think that the government is going to walk away. But the Prime Minister has already basically put his line in the sand on independent dispute resolution mechanisms. So there are certain things that the government has said that those are things that they would be ready to walk away from. I'm not convinced that a bilateral agreement would put us in a better position. It might make it actually harder for us to negotiate. So I don't think that that's something they've talked about it. The Prime Minister talked about it later in the fall. I don't think that's something they actually want.
No. Okay. Now let's talk about other people, other parties. Pablo Norm asks, what do Andrew Scheer and Jagmeet Singh and their respective parties need to start doing differently in 2018? Because we are sort of getting into thinking about campaigns anyway, to actually increase their odds of beating the Liberals in the next federal election.
Policy?
Offer policy.
Offer policy.
That sounds silly to me, Chantal.
Of offering, how did Justin Trudeau win the election? It was not just that he wasn't Stephen Harper or a rock star. It was also that he was saying different things and promising things that people could say, this is what he's saying. You tell me what the Conservatives or the NDP's policies are at this point versus the policies they had going into the last election.
The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, when he was a third-party leader, did not have a whole lot of policy until the few months before the campaign. So I don't know that you need to come out. Like, Jagmeet Singh has come out and he says he wants pharmacare, he wants free post-secondary tuition, he wants this, that, and the other thing. I just think that you don't have a narrative about each leader yet. Like, you don't really know what Andrew Scheer's focus is.
Right? Don't they need to start doing that?
You need to do that with fleshed out policy.
But we're talking about the coming year.
We can do that in January 2019.
The problem for Scheer is
It'll be a long time.
The problem for Scheer is there's a couple of things he needs to happen that are out of his control. One is he needs the NDP to do a lot better than they're doing.
Yes, and they're worried about that,
And secondly, he needs, frankly, a bad economy. It's really hard to displace a sitting government when the economy is doing as well as it is at this moment. I absolutely agree, though, that he's got to start fleshing out policy and got to start moving away from the Harper-style populism. I mean, he has to some extent, but I think there's a clear opening for him to adopt a more genial style, but also a more substantive style. There's a bunch of center-right voters out there who voted for Chrétien and Martin when they were tackling the deficit. They went with Harper for a while until he just became too annoying for them to stick with. But they're there for up for grabs. They're not particularly happy, I don't think, with Justin Trudeau right now.
But I think Althea has something, though. You know, I get the policy matters, but one of Andrew Scheer's problems, and Jagmeet Singh too, is that nobody really knows them, and nobody really has a feel for them.
And they're not going out there and talking to the public as much as they probably should. We knew more about Rona Ambrose when she was interim leader than we know about Andrew Scheer.
Yeah. Although they're trying to.
They're not really. They're denying media requests. He's not out and about as he should be.
Well, I think Singh has to get in Parliament. It's so hard for a third-party leader to get any attention from the media. You've got no control of the agenda. It's very difficult. One of the few places he has is in Parliament, and if I were him, I'd try and get there as soon as possible.
That's easy to say, though, because you do need to find a seat, and the next NDP seat to open, I think, is in Outremont. I don't suggest that
it's possible.
I would take a pass on that one.
Okay,
local and New Democrats.
You should get there as soon as possible, not as soon as impossible.
Okay, last one, and it's from Susan King, and it's an interesting one because I'm sure you all have different names. Let's hope. I would like to ask who the lesser-known backbenchers are to watch in 2018. Who's quietly been doing, I don't think I can say this, kick-ass work or is poised to make a bigger impact? Oh, well, we said it. So is there someone out there that maybe Canadians aren't paying attention to that they should start paying attention to?
I have a couple of names. Marilyn Gladio on the Conservative side. She is a brand new MP from 2015 class. She got a palliative care bill passed. Basically, the Conservatives were arguing that seniors would not be choosing medically assisted dying if there was good palliative care across the country, and it's kind of rare for an opposition MP to get a private member's bill passed, and hers has. And I think that she's potentially a leadership candidate to watch. She's definitely taking more space than you would otherwise think.
She's very affable, too.
She's very lovely, and she's funny. She used to be a stand-up comic. Raj Grewal, he's the Liberal MP that possibly might face off against Jagmeet Singh in Brampton East. Another Sikh who's lovely, young, I think he's under 30 or around there. So that's somebody else to watch. And then if I'm going to pick a New Democrat, I just want to say David Christopherson, because the man does not get enough love. He's one of these old school New Democrats who's always
been there
angry,
forever,
but does good work. And you know, he deserves to get some kudos.
I'm not going to go down a list of
No, you don't have to. You don't have to.
But I will name two names, and I'm going to cheat, too. The first name is Romeo Saganash from the NDP, because he's been a force in pushing for the Indigenous issues, and he has a great government across from him, because they did make a lot of promises, and I think it's important to keep their feet to the fire, and he's been doing a great job on that. And I picked a Conservative senator, Claude Carignan, for his bill on which is now a law on protecting journalism sources, which was a really important law. Interesting that it came from the Senate and the Conservative, and it became a law.
I don't think a senator can be a backbencher, though. I think you've
you
technically cheated. Cheating. Fine, I'll let it go.
I'll just go with the verdict of his fellow parliamentarians, and that's Garnet Genuis, the Conservative MP, who was elected by his peers as Parliamentarian of the Year. Very young, I think he's 30 years old. Very talkative. I think he's the second most most speeches in Parliament in the last past year, and very ideological. When I say that, I mean it as a compliment. That he's somebody who wants the
of course you do.
Somebody who wants the Conservative Party to stand for something, and we need more people like that. But for somebody who is so young and so ideological to also be able to work across party lines and have the respect and support of other parliamentarians says something about him as well.
Do you know all of the MPs? Like, I am still at the point where I see a face every once in a while, and I have no idea who that person is. You're probably better than the rest of us.
I met a woman MP, a Liberal, at the Liberal caucus meeting, and I had no idea she was elected. Well, there were so many new MPs in 2015.
We've got 2 years to go.
This is obviously not a comprehensive list, because... Yes,
we'll do that trivia game, Lester. Okay, thank you all.
We have failed that quiz on cabinet ministers in the past.
Okay, thanks everybody.
I don't remember that.
Good news for you if you enjoy politics as much as us. Canada's most watched political panel is also a podcast. You want to hear Chantal, Andrew, and Althea? Be sure to subscribe. You'll get extra content, and of course, the main panel in every podcast form. Look for it on YouTube, iTunes, podcast apps, or our website, cbcnews.ca/The National.
Coming up, medically assisted dying and organ donation. Those are two big health issues, and each has its own ethical questions. So what if you were to bring them together? We'll bring you the story of a Manitoba man who did just that.
The organ donation became really important to him because he was very caring and very giving. That was just another way for Brian to give life to somebody, right?
It's not surprising that some people that are interested in organ donation want to pair organ donation with this method of dying.
It has been 18 months since medically assisted dying became legal in Canada, leading to more than 2,000 recorded deaths. Now, some of those people would like to donate their organs, but there are some significant challenges, ethically and medically. Karen Pauls brings us the story of one Manitoba man who saw his dying wish to save others come true.
Probably every one of these entries has some story or another that's almost hard to believe.
Rob and Sonia Molyneux still enjoy reading the blog written by their friend, Brian Wadsworth.
Brian was adventurous, but adventure always somehow found Brian.
An avid diver and sailor, Wadsworth lived life to the limit. He didn't let much slow him down until he got sick on a sailing trip in Florida last winter.
Tomorrow I begin a new section on my blog. Things have changed very drastically for me in the last 6 months.
Wadsworth was diagnosed with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. The outgoing adventurer's health deteriorated quickly. Weakening muscles, facing paralysis, Wadsworth wanted medical assistance in dying.
He wanted to still have dignity and didn't want the disease to totally, destroy him.
Once he knew there was a way out or a plan, something that would work for him, he was relieved right away.
Wadsworth had one more wish, to be an organ donor. He went through all the tests, got his affairs in order, and chose a date. Family and friends held a living wake to celebrate his life. Wadsworth had them in stitches as he told stories. The next day, they gathered at his bedside to say their final goodbyes.
And Brian's doing his best to entertain everybody, keep it as light as possible. Yet you could see the fear and uncertainty in his eyes.
In order to donate his organs, Wadsworth had to die in this hospital. Staff had problems finding a vein to connect him to a heart monitor. When they took a break, Rob Molyneux went to get him a coffee and added some Kahlua, Wadsworth's morning ritual.
And that was his treat, probably an hour before he died.
Doctors gave him the drugs that stopped his heart.
The two recipients were waiting in their own surgeries. What we did find out later is that the transplants were successful.
Yeah. How do you think he would have felt to know that?
Proud, extremely proud. He would feel like he died with a purpose.
Brian Wadsworth is one of only a handful of Canadians who have had medical assistance in dying and have donated organs. Doctors say people who opt for medical assistance in dying could be the best candidates.
The more quickly the patient dies, the less stress the organ goes through. Patients with medical assistance in dying tend to die fairly quickly.
People die because they're given drugs that stop the heart, which means it can't be donated. Doctors also have to flush those drugs from the organs that are being transplanted so they're safe for the recipient.
They aren't circulating for any extended period of time in the body, which means that they may be present in the lungs or the kidney, but they're not built up over time where they're doing damage.
Meanwhile, the medical community is still debating how organ donation and assisted dying should be combined.
If a person is requesting medical assistance in dying, that it be a very separate conversation that comes later, not first, with a separate person to talk about the option of organ donation.
When Brian Wadsworth went through this process, his friends were with him every step of the way.
Do you want a coffee?
Sure. Can you put some Kahlua in it for me, please?
I can.
Rob and Sonia are telling his story, continuing his morning ritual.
Say when.
Just some of the ways they remember their friend.
To Brian.
To Brian.
Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A clarification on a story we brought you earlier this week on The National. We overstated the amount of dried cannabis that Health Canada has approved for export. The agency has actually approved the sale of 528 kilograms to international markets for this fiscal year. We'll be right back.
Canada 7, the Czech Republic 2, and Canada will play the Swedes for gold.
A big win tonight for Team Canada at the World Junior Championships. Just moments ago, they beat the Czech Republic 7-2 in the tournament semifinal. That means they're off to face Sweden in tomorrow's final. Sweden beat Team USA 4-2 earlier today.
We've been talking a lot tonight about that intense storm that's pounding the East Coast, so it's only fitting to remind you once again of this anniversary, which is our moment of the day.
Homes are losing power faster than they can restore it.
"20 years ago this week, an ice storm began in southern Quebec and eastern Ontario. But this is also a milestone for our own Adrienne Arsenault. She was there in the field in 1998. This was her first assignment with the National.
And there are big concerns about how well people are coping.
For 5 days, the region was pelted with as much as 100 millimeters of freezing rain. Nearly 5 million people were without power at the storm's peak.
Officials are worried not just about Mother Nature, but human nature. The fear is that people will get bored, wander out, and get hurt by the live wires or the falling trees. Like yesterday.
That's great.
Look, a lot of people found some very interesting ways to cope back then. My favorite ice storm story came out of Kingston roughly 9 months later, if you get my drift. Have a look at this. While the rest of the country was worried about them, some people were coping quite nicely.
Like, this is what we were doing during the ice storm.
Piper Keegan-Watkins, 5 weeks early, but perfect. And there's no doubt she's an ice storm baby. Okay, so not to totally embarrass young Piper, I called her mom today, asked how everyone was. That she's an ice storm baby is definitely part of Piper's story now. She's great, and here she is all grown up. So see, you know, these ice storms aren't all that bad.
Wow. I guess not. I've always wondered how awkward it would be to know all of the details of your own conception.
Okay, the other thing I was going to say is keep in mind in 20 years, we're going to be looking back at pictures of Andrew today who will look the way that Adrienne looked back then.
We'll see how I look then.
Good night.
That is the National for January 4th. Good night.
Night.